Y'all ready?
Yep.
Okay, here we go.
Hey everyone, welcome to Launching Science in the 25-26 school year. We're going to give it just a second so everyone can get in. And it is 2 o'clock. We are going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to Launching Science in the 25-26 school year. As a reminder, in order to get credit for this course, we need you to register in PD&E. So here is the course number for you. That is all we need, and we will make sure that you get credit for this course. So this is my amazing team. My name is Kristen Luthi, and I am the director of K-5 Science. Joining me today and every day is the one and only Brandon McKinney, who is our K-5 Science instructional coach. Elisa Malone is also with us today, and she is our K-12 Science program assistant. And then Brenda McDaniel is our Green and Healthy School rep, who is also part of this amazing K-5 Science team. She helps with all of your composting and gardening needs. So our agenda for today, we are going to talk through instructional calendars and pacing guides. We are going to discuss high quality tier 1 science instruction, and then we're going to go over resources. So starting with instructional calendars. So you may have noticed that the instructional calendars have changed for the 25-26 school year. So back in February, we sent out a survey to all of our schools. We received lots of different feedback around the pacing guides and the instructional calendars. We looked at data and we took all of that into consideration and restructured our instructional calendars. And so that they were restructured based on that teacher feedback. In kindergarten, first and second grade, you're going to see a little bit more alignment to our EL modules. So that was overwhelming feedback that we received. And based on those EL modules and the teacher feedback, we updated the instructional calendars. So instructional calendars can be found in 2 places. It can be found on the main econ page with this purple button, or on your first grade level page. You can also see the instructional calendars for your grade level. So let's talk through pacing guides. Again, we received feedback. We asked for feedback from schools, and based on that feedback, we have updated our pacing guides and our instructional calendars. So pacing guides go through a multiple step process for reviewing and improving, all through the lens of how do we support our students' success the best. And so Brandon and I, again, are a small 2-person team for instruction. And so we rely heavily on curators and teacher leaders to help us make these decisions. Teacher feedback was taken into consideration. Data was taken into consideration. The Department of Education, Georgia DOE, pacing, and resources were all taken into consideration. And we hope that you really like the new pacing guides for the school year. We also want you to know that your voice matters, and throughout the school year, we have a way for you to give feedback on our pacing guides and the resources that you can find on the Comm Center. So when you click this green button that is located on our science page, you will go to this page. You'll have an opportunity to put your name and your school, your grade level. We're going to ask that you provide the link that you're referring to, and then what type of feedback you are giving. Okay. So know that that is open and on our science page for feedback. So now on to the fun stuff. High quality tier 1 science instruction. So when thinking about science instruction this year, I want you to remember 3 words. Okay. We want to start by anchoring our student learning, giving students the opportunity to talk, and then giving our students an opportunity to do the science. So new this year, you will see that we have brand new 5E lessons that are aligned to every indicator. So we've been using the 5E model in Gwinnett County since about 2017 when our standards changed. And so this is not new. We've been doing this. We just have a new graphic and the lessons are set up a little bit different based on that teacher feedback. But there are key tasks and slide decks available for every AKS. So starting with engage. When we engage our students, we want to make sure that we are annotating the learning target, that we're doing that notice and wonder protocol with the phenomenon. Again, this is not new. We want to co-construct vocabulary with the word catcher strategy. When we get to explore, that is going to be our tinker time activity. Then, based on feedback, we heard you loud and clear. You wanted more explicit instruction in the explain phase. So when you open up our new slide decks, you are going to see that explicit instruction with explain. Then you're going to get your students to elaborate. Those are those critical thinking tasks, those literacy mini tasks. And then we have quick checks for the evaluate phase. So this is what the new pacing guides look like for this school year. So this is just a snippet from 5th grade, but they're all set up the same. You see the AKS, the learning target, the 5E lesson plan, the graphic that reminds you of what the 5E model is, and then that formative quick check. So when you think of the 5E model, that we gave you our best thinking around that indicator. So there's one 5E lesson for every indicator. Those are new this year. Then we also have the new formative quick check. I'm going to show you what those look like in just a second. But you might teach the 5E lesson beautifully, and your kids you might give them the formative quick check and they got it. You might also teach the lesson beautifully. You might give the formative quick check, and your students might not have it yet. So you will also see on your pacing guide that we have additional resources, okay? So you have the best thinking that we have around a 5E lesson plan, a strong, solid lesson that goes through all of the pieces, including that explicit instruction. But then, based on where your students are and based on that formative quick check, you have additional resources to support your students. Those are just additional tasks, DOE lessons, just lots of different resources there for you. Okay. We also have new this year. We also heard your feedback and you wanted vocabulary cards broken into units. So those can also be found on the pacing guides. We have new review games. And so you can see here is an example of a review and a Jeopardy game that you can play with your students. There's a wide variety of games based on whatever the AKS is on the pacing guides. And then for 1st grade and kindergarten, we also heard that the sample assessment items needed to be updated and that more pictures needed to be added to them. And so you will see updated assessment items and updated level text. So we rolled out the level text last year. You will notice that they have been updated this year to make them more friendly for our 1st graders. So let's go ahead and dig into the 5E model for teaching science. So we want to start by annotating our learning target, then engaging our students with the 5E model, with the notice and wonder protocol. We want to co-construct vocabulary with our students, have our students explore, that's our tinker time activity, explain, which is that explicit instruction, and then elaborate and evaluate. So we're going to start off with annotating our learning targets. So you can see these pictures are pictures that I found out in the wild. I've taken out in the wild. These are Gwinnett County teachers who are annotating their learning targets, so you can kind of see what that looks like. When we annotate our learning target, it increases student engagement, It increases student achievement. And then it also enhances students' ownership of their learning. When students know what they're learning, they're more likely to have that ownership over what they're learning, okay? We are super excited that you are going to find examples embedded in the 5E lesson plans of annotated learning targets. So if you're like, I know I need to annotate this learning target, but I'm not quite sure what it needs to look like, you can click on the 5E lesson and it will show you an example of that learning target annotated. Next, we're going to engage students with the anchor phenomenon. So we're going to do the notice and wonder protocol. This completely stayed the same, except again, you're going to see some anchor charts in the lesson plan. So what questions might my students ask? What might they notice? How do I take a question and make it an open question? How do I classify questions as opened or closed? And then how do I take my question and refine it with my students? So you're going to see a progression of anchor charts. What does it look like when we notice and wonder together? What does it look like when I make them open and close questions? And what does it look like when I refine those questions? And so you'll see a progression for every indicator with what that might look like in your classroom. Next, we want to co-construct vocabulary with your students. Again, this is not a new strategy. We've been using the word catcher for several years, but this is one of my favorite quotes from WIDA. It says that the meaning of science concepts is captured in a web of information, not in a word. And until students can connect the word with that web of information through experiences with a phenomenon or by connecting it to similar or related words that are already known, the word itself conveys and holds relatively little meaning. And so this quote reminds me of our Natalie Wexler work. When Natalie Wexler says that knowledge is like Velcro, it has to stick to other pieces of knowledge, right? Just like Velcro sticks together. And so by giving our students experiences and by catching words through the word catcher strategy, we can then go back and develop meaning with our students. Again, in the lesson plan, you are going to see a progression of the word catcher. What does it look like at the beginning when I've started catching the words? What does it look like when we've added more words to it? And what does it look like when I've started constructing that meaning with my students? Once I have annotated my learning target, I have done my notice and wonder protocol, and I have started my word catcher, I've begun to anchor my student learning, okay? Next, we need our students to talk about science and do the science. So having those instructional conversations and then actually engaging in the science and engineering practices. So next up is explore. So we've engaged our students. Now we are going to explore through our tinker time. So this is when students are talking and actually doing the science, okay? And again, tinker time is not new for us. We've been doing tinker time for a long time, but that is the explore section. Now, I've already started getting questions on the 5E model. Can we take explain and put it before explore? Can we engage our students and then explain? And the answer is no. We want to make sure that we give students the opportunity to explore before the teacher explains. Back to having that experience to Velcro our knowledge onto when we begin to explicitly teach, okay? So students need the opportunity to explore before the teacher explains. So last year we rolled out explicit instruction for our students and we received lots of feedback with teachers asking for more explicit instruction. And so you are going to see that in the explain phase. So you are going to see updated slides in the explain phase. You are going to see teaching points in our lesson plans that are aligned to the slide decks so that you can give your students that explicit instruction. Next, we are going to elaborate and students are going to continue to do the science. So those are those critical thinking tasks, those literacy mini tasks. And often it is through the lens of our science and engineering practices. So students are developing models, they're planning and carrying out investigations, they're engaging in an argument from evidence. So again, those critical thinking tasks, those literacy mini tasks that we have done in the past are going to be embedded in our 5E lessons. Then we want to evaluate our student learning. And so we have brand new this year, the formative quick checks. There are 6 questions, and you can give them to your students to evaluate what they have learned in the 5E lesson. You will notice that the 5E model is circular. So you might evaluate and your students might not have it yet. So you might have to go back and engage your students and explore and explain again. And so you're going to do that through those through those additional resources, but also through the explicit small group lesson plans. So the formative assessment and the small group lesson plans have not gone anywhere. They're still there. They're still embedded in the 5E lessons. But that is a great way to get all of your students to be successful in mastering the AKS. So when I have done all of these things, when I've completed the 5E lesson plan, I have anchored my student learning, I've given my students an opportunity to talk, and then I've engaged my students by allowing them to do the science. So we are also super excited. When you go to those brand new slide decks, you are going to see the QSSA strategy embedded. And so you need to look for this icon that says QSSA, and it is going to walk you through a meaningful interaction for students. So a QSSA is an enhanced turn and talk where you use a process to help students engage in those meaningful conversations. So again, the lesson plan is going to tell you what to say and what to do. The QSSA logo is going to be on the slide deck to help support your students through that. So you are going to start by asking your students a question. You're going to allow them that independent thinking time and give them a signal to let them know when they're ready to respond. So you might ask a question and say, give me a thumbs up when you have your answer. Then you're going to provide students with a sentence stem. Then you are going to allow your students to turn and talk. Then you're going to assess the student learning by discussing as a whole group or having your students write on a sticky note in their science journal what their answer is, okay? And again, the sentence stems, the questions, everything is already embedded in those slide decks for you. So let's talk about instructional resources. So you have on your grade level page, your instructional calendars, your science and engineering practices, your ML learner supports, your learning targets and vocabulary. Remember, there's new vocabulary cards there. And then the K-5 Science Leader Toolkit. Under each unit, so when you click on the individual unit, you're going to see, again, that instructional calendar, your pacing guide, which is going to have all of those 5E lessons, the analyzing the standards documents, and then the updated assessment items. When you click on your pacing guide, you are going to see the AKS, but then we also have additional resources to support you. The Analyzing the Standards document, the Sample Assessment Item Bank, the text sets that have been updated from last year, the learning targets and vocabulary, a material list of what you need in order to do these activities with your students, and then ML supports and science and engineering practice supports and launch lessons. Also, we have updated our CLT toolkits. So when you are on your main grade level page, if you click on this button, that is going to take you to the CLT toolkit. This provides CLT support for when you are meeting with your grade level, or if you just need additional information and resources to support that AKS. So you are going to see lesson planning and pacing suggestions, everything from the pacing guide to the learning targets to the vocabulary and the anchor charts that you can use with that lesson. You're going to see assessment strategies, whether it be the formative assessment, the unit review, quick formative assessment strategies, or the sample assessment item bank. Then small group instruction, how do we support our students through our small group lesson plans, looking at small group lessons in action and differentiated small group tips and tricks. And then we also have in our CLT toolkit, ML strategies to support our students. So let's talk about science materials. So first grade has received huge hands to mind custom kits. So those kits were designed specifically to support the AKS in Gwinnett County Public Schools. So you received those 3 years in a row, thanks to our ESSER funds. And those kits are meant to be used up, but you still should have materials in those kits to support learning. Now we know that you might have run out of something, so we have downloaded money to every school to support science instruction. We never want science materials to come in the way of that high quality tier 1 science instruction that we want for our students. And so if you have run out of pipe cleaners or clay or something else, please reach out to your local school administrators because we have downloaded money to support science instruction and those materials that you might need in your classrooms. Also, we have purchased 10 sets of each of these books. They are library bound and hard copy, and so they are books that are put out by the National Science Teacher Association that are great for supporting the learning within your classroom. So make sure that you locate where these books are because they are great, again, to support high quality tier 1 science instruction. And then know that Brandon and I are here to support you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to either one of us and we will get back to you. So we have just about 3 or 4 minutes before it is time to send you to your next session. But I wanted to take a moment and talk you through a couple resources that are on the eComm. So if you click on the Science Office homepage, there are lots of resources here, including professional development opportunities, the resources from our professional development. So if you did not make it to Science Institute this summer, you can click here and it has the slide decks for you. Also, Brandon and I are on YouTube. So you can click this link, like and subscribe, and we are working on updating videos for YouTube to help support you. We also have our feedback form. It's located on this page, and then lots of different resources to support you. I want to highlight the digital books. These are the Next Time You See and the I Wonder Why books. These are digital copies, and so these are great to read aloud to your students. And then if you ever wonder, what does something look like in somebody else's classroom, right? So what does a word catcher look like? This slide deck gives you pictures of different word catchers, of anchor charts, of notice and wonder protocols that are, as I'm out at schools, I'm taking pictures of. This one is actually one of my favorites because it's plant and animal needs. And so she has added in some different tactile objects for her students. So this is a great resource to see live in action what science should look like. Then I also want to take you to the instructional resources. So here are the grade level instructional resources we talked about, the CLT toolkit, the amazing curators that worked this summer to curate these lessons. But when you click on your pacing guide, you will see a unit 0, so setting up your classroom for science success. You will see the analyzing the standards, the updated assessment item bank, which should look more first grade friendly for you. Then we also have our text sets that have pictures and that are aligned to all of our indicators. We have our learning targets and vocabulary, our launch lessons for asking questions, and then our 5E lesson plan. So this is the 5E lesson plan for the first indicator. So as you scroll down, you are going to see those anchor charts that I was telling you about. How do we annotate our learning target? How do we do a notice and wonder protocol? How do we do a word catcher with our students? And the progression of that. And then in the explain phase, you're going to see those explicit teaching points for explicit instruction with our students, okay? Then also on the 5E lesson is the slide deck that is aligned. So we have our engage section, our phenomenon. Here we have a QSSA. What do you notice? What do you wonder? Give me a thumbs up when you have your answer. We have our sentence stems, our assess, and then I want to really highlight for you the explain piece, which has that explicit instruction for your students. Okay. So thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you have a great start to your school year, and Brandon and I hope to see you out soon at your school or either at professional development. Thanks, y'all.